The autumn air in Staffordshire carried more than the usual chill. It carried words that no monarch expects to hear in public. Words sharp enough to cut through centuries of royal ceremony. As King Charles III greeted crowds outside Lichfield Cathedral, an ordinary moment in a royal walkabout became something extraordinary. A voice broke through the formality, clear and pointed. "How long have you known about Andrew and Epstein?" The crowd stirred, startled. The king's composure momentarily faltered. Security leaned in. The sovereign, under public scrutiny as never before, was guided away, leaving a silence far heavier than protocol. In that moment, the fragility of the institution was laid bare, not in scandalous whispers behind palace walls, but in the raw reality of public confrontation. What had once been whispers had become a shout, and the monarchy, for all its robes and rituals, had no words in return. Before we dive in, there's something I need to share with you. Over the past few days, thousands have watched these stories unfold, but most haven't subscribed. If you're one of them, I invite you now to join us. Subscribe to Crownverse so you never miss the next chapter in this unfolding royal history. The confrontation was brief, but its meaning was vast. In those seconds, King Charles was not just a figurehead walking among his subjects. He was a father, a brother, and a king, forced to carry the unresolved burden of a scandal that refuses to fade. The protesters' question pierced through layers of decorum. "How long have you known?" Not a question of guilt, but of silence. Not about Prince Andrew's actions alone, but about the institution's response. The monarchy has always relied on distance to maintain its dignity, but now the crowd is closer, the questions louder, and the answers still missing. The timing of the incident was no coincidence. Just days earlier, it had been confirmed that Prince Andrew would no longer use his title, Duke of York. This was no quiet transition. It was the final public step in a long series of withdrawals. Military affiliations returned, patronages removed, public duties abandoned. The palace's language was careful, as always. The prince will step back from public life. But to the public, the message was clearer. Andrew had become a liability, one the monarchy could no longer carry in full view. Yet stepping back does not mean disappearing. The name remains, the connection remains, and for critics of the monarchy, Andrew's continued presence, however muted, represents unfinished business. Groups like Republic, who have long called for the abolition of the monarchy, now find their message echoed by more moderate voices. Not everyone calling for accountability wants to end the crown, but many now question whether the institution has truly reckoned with the damage done. The protester in Staffordshire was not an isolated case. There have been murmurs, signs, symbols, placards at royal events, online campaigns, petitions calling for greater transparency. Even MPs have begun to ask cautiously whether the system of royal immunity and public privilege can continue untouched. In that wider context, the heckling of King Charles becomes more than a moment. It becomes a marker of frustration, of anger, of democratic demand. What's striking is the king's response, or rather, the lack of one. He did not engage, he did not acknowledge. He moved forward, aided by security, continuing his duties as if nothing had occurred. It was the correct protocol. It was what his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, would have done. And yet the silence lingered. It seemed almost inadequate given the weight of the question. In a modern monarchy, can avoidance still be equated with dignity? Inside the palace, sources suggest the event left an impression, not just because of the protesters' words, but because of what they represent. There was no outburst from tabloids, no grand conspiracy, just a citizen asking a question in public. That's what made it powerful and unsettling. The monarchy, designed to inspire reverence, was now being asked for explanations. Prince Andrew's fall from grace has been gradual but relentless. His 2019 BBC interview marked a turning point. What was intended as a defense became a disaster. His insistence on innocence, his dismissive tone, his bizarre claims about Pizza Express and a rare medical condition, these only fueled skepticism. When the civil lawsuit was settled, it brought no legal conviction, but neither did it bring closure. For many, it was not a vindication but a transaction. The questions remained. The silence grew heavier. For King Charles, the inheritance of the crown includes not just jewels and duties, but controversies. He ascended the throne with the promise of a leaner, more transparent monarchy, one suited for modern times. But how modern can an institution be if it cannot address the very questions that dominate its shadow? The protest in Staffordshire did not emerge from nowhere. It emerged from years of avoidance, from the gap between royal narrative and public expectation.
The monarchy has survived crises before, abdications, affairs, family rifts. But this is different. This is not about love or marriage or protocol. This is about justice, about who answers to the law and who does not. And in that equation, the royal family finds itself uncomfortably exposed. The palace's decision to distance itself from Andrew has been strategic, but to many it feels incomplete. Titles may be dropped, appearances cancelled, but the legacy remains unresolved. It is this unresolved legacy that now haunts King Charles's reign, not because of direct guilt. There is no evidence he knew, condoned, or shielded, but because, as monarch, he is now the face of the crown's moral authority, and that authority is increasingly being questioned, not by radicals, but by citizens who simply want accountability. In the days following the protest, there was no official comment, no palace statement, no address. Perhaps the silence is strategic, perhaps it is rooted in tradition, or perhaps it is simply that no good answer exists. The monarchy has long relied on mystery as protection, but in the age of open information, mystery can become mistrust. The incident in Staffordshire will not define Charles's reign, but it will be remembered, because it showed that even the sovereign is no longer insulated from the past, that even a king can be asked in public what he knew and when. And while the answer may never be given, the question will not go away. In many ways, this moment is emblematic of the crossroads at which the British monarchy now stands. Tradition demands distance. Modernity demands dialogue. The crown has always straddled the line between symbolism and service, but now the balance is shifting. The public wants more than pageantry. They want integrity. They want transparency, and they want accountability not just from the government, but from the family that claims to embody the nation. King Charles has shown himself willing to adapt. He has embraced environmental causes, engaged with faith communities, and pledged a streamlined monarchy. But adapting also means confronting the legacy of silence, and that may be the hardest adaptation of all. The question shouted in Staffordshire will not be the last. Others will follow. And each time, the monarchy will be tested, not by scandal alone, but by its response, by whether it chooses silence or speech, retreat or reckoning. As the reign of Charles III unfolds, it will not be the robes or rituals that determine its legacy. It will be the moments like these, the interruptions, the questions, the quiet decisions made behind palace walls, and the public's reaction to them. In that way, the monarchy is no longer simply a spectacle to observe. It is a conversation to be had, a contract to be revisited. And for those who believe in its future, that conversation must include not just the crown's glory, but its ghosts. If you found this exploration meaningful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Crownverse, where crown history isn't just remembered, but examined, where tradition meets transparency, and where the crown is always more than just a symbol.